My son texted me, "Happy birthday," 11 days after my actual birthday, and signed it with his full name, like I was a coworker he barely knew. I didn't understand why until I saw the family phone plan bill 3 weeks later. This is still waters. Here's what he wrote. I'm Ethan. I'm 39. My ex-wife Renee and I split 2 years ago, after 11 years of marriage, and on paper it was about as clean as these things get. No affairs, no big blow-up, just two people who'd stopped wanting the same life. We share custody of our kids, Owen, 12, and Piper, 9, on a standard week-on, week-off schedule that a mediator drew up in about 90 minutes. Everyone said we were doing it right. I believed that for close to a year. The shift was slow enough that I didn't clock it as a pattern at first. Owen stopped texting me first during his weeks at Renee's. Used to send me stupid videos of his soccer practice. Stopped around month 14. Piper started calling me Ethan instead of Dad for about 6 weeks, then switched back. And when I gently asked her about it, she just shrugged and said, "Mom does it sometimes, so I guess I copied her." I filed that away and didn't push, because 9-year-olds say strange things, and I didn't want to make her feel cornered. One exchange, in particular, should have told me more than it did at the time. Owen's 12th birthday, which fell on one of my weeks. Renee texted asking to swap so she could do something special since she'd apparently missed his 11th due to a work trip the year before. I agreed, gave up my week without much thought, because that's the kind of thing you do when you're trying to co-parent like an adult. 3 days after his actual birthday, on a day that was mine again, Owen mentioned offhand that they'd gone to a water park with the whole family. Renee's parents, her sister, her sister's kids, and I asked, just making conversation, if he'd had fun. He said yeah, and then, almost as an aside, "Mom said you probably wouldn't have wanted to come anyway." I hadn't been invited. I hadn't been asked. The framing had just been quietly installed. Not that I wasn't there, but that I wouldn't have wanted to be. Anyone who's had a kid hand them back a sentence that clearly wasn't theirs knows the exact unease that creates. Over the following months, I started noticing the sentences more than the events. Piper telling me, apropos of nothing, that Mom says it's okay that you forget stuff. Some people are just like that. I had never forgotten a pickup, a recital, a single thing. But the sentence existed now, planted and ready to explain any future gap, whether or not one occurred. Owen, 12, going on protective of his mother in a way that felt less like values and more like assignment, telling me I didn't have to be sad when I mentioned missing them during my off week, in a tone that suggested sadness itself was something he'd been coached to manage in me. I didn't have proof of anything. I had a collection of sentences that didn't sound like children, and a mounting, specific dread I couldn't yet justify to anyone, including myself. The actual discovery was almost an accident. Our family cell plan, 4 lines, mine, Renee's, and the kids, had never been split after the divorce, mostly out of inertia and the fact that splitting it would have cost both of us more individually. I was the account holder, which meant I had access to the family sharing dashboard for backup and device location purposes, mostly so I could find Piper's phone when she left it at soccer. One evening, trying to locate Owen's iPad after he swore he'd lost it at my place, I ended up in the family messages backup, not reading anyone's texts, just scrolling device names, and saw a shared photo album titled, plainly, Memories, that auto-synced across every device on the plane, including mine, which none of us had apparently noticed in 2 years. Here's exactly what happened next, because it matters. I didn't go looking for anything. The album was already syncing to a folder on my own laptop, the way iCloud albums do, and browsing my own local files. After a slow backup one night, I found screenshots. Dozens of them. Texts between Renee and her sister, spanning close to a year, saved into that shared album. I still don't know if intentionally or by accident on her end, that read less like private venting and more like a plan. 3 of them stand out because the specifics matter more than any summary I could give. One, from 14 months earlier. Told Piper Daddy's too busy this week. Easier than explaining he just didn't ask for the swap. She believed it. Didn't even seem sad. 2, from 9 months earlier, after Owen's soccer season ended. If O keeps saying he wants to live with E full-time, I might actually lose it. Going to start reminding him how much easier things are here. 3, from 4 months earlier. Working on Piper calling him Ethan. Feels petty writing it, but it's working. Distance is distance. I sat with those screenshots for 2 full days before I told anyone, including my own lawyer, because I needed to be sure I wasn't reading intent into something that could have had an innocent explanation. There wasn't one. The dates lined up exactly with the sentences I'd been collecting for a year. The water park framing, the "some people just forget" line, the 6-week stretch of Ethan instead of Dad. Every strange sentence from my kids had a corresponding text from their mother, dated days or weeks before. I called a family law attorney, a careful, unhurried woman named Priscilla Finn, who specializes in custody modifications, and I brought her the screenshots along with a log I built after the fact, going back through old texts, calendar swaps, and my own memory, to timestamp every one of the strange sentences against Renee's messages. She told me something that reframed the whole situation for me. What I was describing had a name: parental alienation, and courts take documented, deliberate patterns of it seriously, but only documented ones. Not vibes. Not a father's hurt feelings. Actual dated correspondence, showing intent. I didn't confront Renee first. Priscilla was clear that confronting her would just mean the pattern got more careful, not that it stopped, and that the goal wasn't to win an argument with my ex-wife. It was to get the kids into a structure that actually protected them from this going forward. So for 6 weeks, I said nothing to Renee. I did start doing something differently with the kids, though. Small, consistent, undramatic. When Owen said I didn't have to be sad, I told him gently that it was okay for dads to miss their kids, that missing someone isn't a problem to manage. When Piper called me Ethan, I didn't correct her. I just kept calling her by name, warmly, the same as always, and let her find her own way back to Dad, which she did on her own about 10 days later. The petition Priscilla filed asked for 2 things: a formal, court-appointed evaluation of both households, and a modified custody arrangement with a built-in communication protocol, meaning any changes to the schedule, any explanations given to the kids about the other parent's availability had to go through a shared written log both of us could see, not private conversations where a sentence like "Daddy's too busy" could get planted and never checked. Renee's response, once she was served, was not the response of someone who thought she'd get away with an innocent misunderstanding. She called me 11 times in one evening. When I finally picked up, she said the texts to her sister were just venting, that everyone says things they don't mean when they're frustrated, that I was twisting private conversations into a legal weapon. I told her, as evenly as I could manage, that venting doesn't include phrases like working on Piper calling him Ethan. It's working. That's not frustration. That's a status update on a project. The evaluation took 11 weeks. A court-appointed psychologist named Dr. Okonkwo Reyes interviewed both households separately, interviewed Owen and Piper individually, and reviewed the screenshots alongside my dated log of the sentences. Her report used the phrase consistent, low-grade, alienating behavior, and specifically noted Piper's documented shift in what she called the child by name as a measurable, time-stamped example, unusual in its clarity. The judge didn't strip Renee of custody. That was never what I was asking for, and Priscilla had been clear from the start that courts are reluctant to do that absent something far more severe. What we got instead was the communication protocol, mandatory co-parenting counseling for both of us, and a clause specifying that any future documented instance of alienating language toward either child would be grounds for an emergency custody review. Renee's lawyer fought hardest against the counseling requirement, which told me more than almost anything else in the case about what she actually thought the problem was. Owen is 13 now. He calls me most nights during Renee's weeks, unprompted, just to talk about nothing. A habit that started back up about 4 months after the ruling, once the sentences stopped arriving preloaded with someone else's framing. Piper has never once slipped back to calling me Ethan. She did ask me once, a few months ago, completely out of nowhere, why she used to do that, and I told her the truth in language a 9-year-old could hold. That sometimes grown-ups are sad or angry and they don't always know how to say it the right way. And it wasn't her job to fix that, and it was never about her. Renee and I are civil now, mostly through the log, which turned out to be less of a punishment and more of a relief for both of us. Neither of us has to remember what we said or guess what the other one told the kids, because it's just there, dated, plain, checkable by anyone who needs to check it. I still have the screenshots saved somewhere, backed up in 3 places, though I haven't opened that folder in almost a year. I don't need to anymore. The kids call me by my actual name now, both of them, and it's not a small thing, even though it sounds like one. So here's what I keep wondering. How many kids are out there right now, repeating a sentence that isn't theirs, that nobody's checked the timestamp on? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. That's the whole story. If this one stayed with you, subscribe to Still Waters. Thanks for listening.